Let's throw some jabs.
The fight starts now!
Welcome to a special edition of Jabs, where Sergio, you and I are going to look back at the year that was in 2022. And I want to start with the biggest name in all of boxing, Canelo Alvarez, who had been on a hot streak, had not lost a fight since 2013. That all changed last May when he dropped a decision to Dimitri Bivol. Now, Canelo did rally and did punctuate his rivalry with Gennady Golovkin with a decision win. But what kind of year was it for Canelo Alvarez?
Well, he lost, so it wasn't what he expected, but he lost to a bigger champion and a fighter in Bivol who really had his number, Mannix. He had the jab, he had the ring generalship, he had the power, and he matched Canelo with everything that Canelo brings to the table. And you got to give it to Bivol because we didn't expect that. No one expected that. I mean, he was like a 6-1 underdog? So he did what he had to do, and Canelo was caught off guard. It might be different for him the second time around, but we need to see it to believe it.
Yeah, I can't say it's a bad year for anyone that made like $100 million, which is what Canelo probably walked away with. And getting that victory over Golovkin, even though it was clear that Golovkin was well past his prime, and that was important. And that rivalry needed to be settled. And look, I'll never criticize a guy for daring to be great. Boxing's biggest problem right now is that guys are too protective of their records. Canelo Alvarez moved up in weight. He faced in his prime light heavyweight, and he got beat. I don't really have a problem with that. I think Canelo had a pretty good year, all things considered. Now, women's boxing had a great year. You know, we begin in April with potentially the fight of the year, Katie Taylor against Amanda Serrano. A little bit later in the year, you had Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall headlining an all-women's card over in London that included a blood feud between Alicia Baumgardner and Michaela Mayer. You've got Ebony Bridges emerging as something of a star over in the UK. How big a step forward did women's boxing take this year, Sergio?
It was incredible. I mean, as a fighter, we've always respected what women did. They just never got the platform. They never got the main event. They never got the big fights. Now the attention is on them, and we got to credit Matchroom Promotions, Eddie Hearn, giving them that platform and giving them that stage to shine on. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano in Madison Square Garden. That was history, her story, whatever they want to call it. It broke numbers. It did great, but from there, you had, like you said, Alicia Baumgardner and Michaela Mayer. That was an amazing fight. Not only that, it was an upset, but the back and forth marketing. I mean, it was just great all around. The GOAT, Claressa Shields, she said a little business. This is what we want to see in 2023, but we want to see it with all the fighters. We want to see Jessica McCaskill come back, Tanisha Estrada. We want all the big fights being made, and this is what the women do. The ladies don't avoid conflict. They want the best. They want to unify and become undisputed, and I think we're seeing it.
I think one of the things that women's boxing showcased this year was depth. I think in recent years, we've seen the rise of specific women's boxers, Katie Taylor, Claressa Shields. This was the year that women's boxing flexed its depth. I mean, Taylor Serrano was a mega fight, maybe the fight of the year, men's or women's. You had Shields Marshall, Shields in her toughest fight to date against the woman that beat her in the amateur ranks. And I would love to see Baumgardner and Mayer go at it 3 times at some point in their professional careers. And I think what women's boxing accomplished this year is going to really springboard it into next year, because you can make a list, Sergio, of like the top 10 fights we're looking forward to in 2023. Probably 3 or 4 of them are women. At the top of the list is the rematch between Taylor and Serrano. If that's at Croke Park in Dublin, that's going to be fantastic. But even fights that didn't happen this year, like I would love to see Ebony Bridges against Shannon Courtney in a rematch. I would love to see an all-British showdown at 154 between Natasha Jonas and Terry Harper. Women's boxing this year really showed that it's more than just a couple of women. There's 7, 8, 9, 10 women or more that are capable of making big fights. That's only going to help women's boxing grow in the future. So from there, let's move on to Anthony Joshua, going back over to the UK. Anthony Joshua, his decline, do you want to call it that, began in 2019 with the loss to Andy Ruiz. He bounced back, beat Ruiz in the rematch, but the last couple of years, tough for him. He loses his titles to Oleksandr Usyk, and then earlier this year, he lost the rematch to Usyk. So What kind of year was it for Anthony Joshua? Where does Anthony Joshua stand as we head into 2023?
See, for Anthony Joshua, it was a dispiriting year because he really wanted to win that rematch, and you could see it by the way he acted after losing to Usyk, and that that he didn't act like the champion he normally does. He kind of acted immature, but that's what happens when you break a fighter mentally. Joshua was broken. He was broken by the Ruiz fight, but he came back and won the rematch. Okay, Usyk, no shame losing in him. He's undefeated. He cleaned out cruiserweight. He bounced up. No shame in losing to Usyk, but losing in the rematch, that's when there's a problem. So Joshua, I think he lost it here, man. He lost it there, and boxing is 90% mental. So yeah, it's gonna be tough for him to bounce back.
Yeah, I think my takeaway from Anthony Joshua in 2022 is that he needs more stability in his career. I'm again, just like with Canelo, I'm not going to fault him for losing to a top 5 pound-for-pound guy in Oleksandr Usyk. This was the undisputed cruiserweight champion who is obviously elite in the heavyweight division. And there's not a lot of heavyweights, maybe including Tyson Fury, who can beat Oleksandr Usyk. So I'm not going to fault Joshua for the losses. What I don't like about this year with Joshua is that he went into the second Usyk fight with a new training team. And then immediately after that fight, it seems like he's looking for another training team. He's over in the US working out with Derek James and other trainers, trying to find the right fit. Just doesn't seem like there's consistency. And even though I like the idea of adding voices to your team and learning more as your career goes on, you know this, at some point you need stability. You need the same voice, the same teaching over and over again in order to kind of build some momentum back up. So that's what concerned me about this year with Anthony Joshua. Not the loss, but the stability that is seemingly not there within his camp. All right, Jake Paul, your favorite fighter. One fight in 2022. He beats Anderson Silva, the ex-MMA star, who had a decent boxing resume, including a win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Yes, he was 47 years old, but that stands probably as the biggest win of Jake Paul's boxing career. So, Sergio, did Jake Paul prove anything to you in 2022?
No, because he still hasn't faced a real fighter, a real boxer, I should say. So not until he faces a real boxer, a real professional fighter with a real record that actually fought other professional fighters, I can't give this man any kind of respect as a fighter. I mean, as a promoter, as a social media guy, as a marketing genius, especially in this new age of social media. Yes, I give him all the credit in the world, Mannix. But as a fighter, I can't do it. I can't give him that respect until he faces somebody that has my respect and every other fighter's respect.
Okay, well, I will say this about Jake Paul, and I've said this a lot. The fact that he has not faced the quote-unquote real fighter is not his fault. He has tried multiple times to make fights with Tommy Fury. They've failed. He tried over the summer to make a fight with Asim Rahman Jr. It was Rahman Jr. that could not make the weight that he agreed to for that fight to happen. Anderson Silva, yes, 47 years old, not a real boxer, but he probably had more boxing experience for sure, but more boxing gravitas than anyone Jake Paul had faced up until that point. I agree with you. Jake Paul still has a lot to prove when it comes to boxing. He has to face someone that is more in line with an in his prime boxer. I think he's going to do that in 2023. But Jake Paul in 22 showed me that he's still growing. He's still getting better. And I think he still has a lot to give the sport of boxing. Now, from someone who had a good 22 to someone who had a really bad 22. Conor Benn, going into September, was headed into the biggest fight of his career, a domestic showdown against Chris Eubank Jr. Then it was revealed he tested positive for a banned substance. It was revealed later he tested positive twice for a banned substance. That fight against Eubank was scrapped. It may never be rescheduled. So where does Conor Benn stand in your mind after 2022?
When it comes to fighters, we respect each other because we spill the same blood. We get in the same ring. It's an honest sport. We can hurt each other. Whenever you get somebody that cheats, they're never going to admit to it, and you can really hurt someone badly. He needs to apologize to the world. He needs to actually face somebody that that is going to give him a tough challenge. So there's a lot of competition at 147. So to get those fans back, the ones that he dispirited and let down, all the people that supported him, not only in the UK but all around the world, he needs to come back, not only apologize, but take on a big fight next. Take on a big fight. Go through all the program and the regimen to prove that you're a clean fighter. Then once you step in the ring, say, I want this guy, a big fighter, undefeated. That's who I want next. No tune-up, no nothing. That's how he gets the admiration, I would say, back from some of these fans that he lost.
Yeah, before Conor Benn can regain his momentum in the ring, he's got to find a way to regain some credibility outside the ring. He's obviously going to have to enter year-round testing. He's going to have to be part of, whether it's the WBC clean boxing program, year-round VADA, whatever it is, he's going to have to enroll to it and prove to people, not just over 1 year, but 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, that he's a clean fighter. He's also going to have to provide a better explanation for his positive tests. The statements he's released, including the ones he released in December, do not take any responsibility for anything. His most recent statements effectively claimed that he had been vindicated when that couldn't be further from the truth. He said he'll be back in January, not until he comes up with a reasonable explanation for these positive tests. So for me, Conor Benn, this year, the rest of this year, and into next year, it's about regaining that credibility, regaining trust. And one of the first things he has to do is properly explain or properly apologize for what happened with those positive tests.
Or properly whoop someone's butt in a clean fashion. That also makes people forget. The thing about boxing is you're one great performance from, erasing, maybe not a failed drug test, but erasing a bad performance or a bad taste that you left in fans' mouth. One great performance, that's what it does. But when it comes to Conor Benn, yes, I think he needs to. We've already been through this. He needs to admit what he did, say he was young and foolish, move on from it. People will forgive him. But if he just continues to just try to sweep it under the rug and say that it was whatever excuses used, that's not how you get the respect back. That's not how you win the admiration from the fans that you lost. You admit to what you did and keep whooping ass. That's how he did it in the beginning. He was getting fans everywhere by knocking out fighters, former champions like Chris Algieri. That's how you do it. This kid was a good. He still can be, but admit his guilt.